In public speaking, speakers don't write papers. Instead, we write outlines. Now, you are going to be writing everything that you intend to say in the speech in your preparation outline. So that may sound like, okay, well, if I'm going to write everything, am I just basically writing a paper? No, you're writing an outline. Because in public speaking, we don't write papers. Instead, we write an outline format. Outlines help us maintain that speech's focus, like it's saying, helps us to look at the content and assess the logical form. Outlines provide us with a visual framework that allows us to see the proportion, the balance of this speech. It allows us to see when something needs to be supported. And outlines help us deliver much more effectively. Many of you realized that having your entire speech written or having all of your notes in block form were not effective because it is hard to find your spot and where you are on your page when something is in a block form. That's why having an outline, not only for your speaker's outline, but also for the preparation outline, the outline that you submit to me, those should be done with the same symbolization and indentation to allow for ease of the reader and allow for ease of the speaker. So organizing and outlining our speech, there are going to be two different types of outlines. I am going to give you both of these ideas. The preparation outline is the speech outline you turn into me. This one is due the day that you speak. So by midnight, the night that you speak, next Wednesday, this outline is due to our Canvas page, the preparation outline. This outline is worth 50 points of your speech. And that is why I'm going to put this emphasis on making sure that it's in correct form, because the outline format is going to not only tell us that you have a logical and clear structure of your speech, that when you deliver it, it's going to make sense. I can look at that. But then also it's going, we'll make sure that you get those 50 points by preparing and practicing in that way as well. Now, a speaker's outline follows the same pattern of organization as well as symbolization, like your ones, your twos, your A's, your B's, but it is only keywords and phrases that you are going to say. Now, those keywords and phrases are reminders about what you're going to speak about. And if you remember from our last speeches, some of you were in classes, or maybe some of you were those individuals that I said, put down the paper and just talk to us and tell us what you are going to say rather than reading it. Because when we get stuck in reading it, it becomes memorized. We get tripped up in the words. We sit, and if we don't know what we're saying next, then we lose our train of thought altogether. I have you practice with your speaker's outlines because those are your words and that's what you're going to be using. And you know the familiarity of your own writing and what those words mean and how you can articulate that on your speech day without having to necessarily be attached to a script or stuck reading. Your speaking outline, you do not need to submit to me. I told you that, I think last week, but that is not going to be required for you to turn in. The only thing that you are going to need to turn in is that preparation outline. So as it says here, outline structure, and that's something that I'm going to go over with you today. We'll look at your outline structure and also the guidelines. But one thing that I want to point out to you is how to stop automatic indentation and formatting in your document. There is, I don't know about anyone else, but when we talk about why either the text automatically changes or why the outline indentation automatically changes, I want to encourage you to go through this. Outlining can sometimes present a pickle for individuals because our Word documents will be tab A, I, and then it'll start the ones that, start outlining for us without us wanting to put those symbols or indentation. And with us in public speaking, what you'll also know is that we do not outline in standard form. So you're going to want to take that formatting off. Otherwise, it's going to create a problem later on. So I encourage each of you to take off that formatting when you can. And if you could do it earlier than later, it's ideal. File options, autocorrect from the proofing category, and then auto format as you type. If you want to go through any of these, and you just kind of take off some of the ones. I'll show you a couple quick tips as well when I go into outlining over here. Oh, and I'm not even really showing you that. Was I showing you that stuff? Sorry, there is under the outlining, there is a little guide here, how to start the automatic automation. And so it talks about how to stop the outline and numbered lists right there that you can do and you can turn off. And a good Google search will help really you figure that out as well. So the thing that I want to make sure, the handout and the following page is a good resource. You can always use that, but I am going to go ahead and copy and paste this for today. I'm going to go ahead and put it into a document that we can go through. And I'm also going to copy and paste this over here. All right, y'all. So if you can see on this Word document that we have here, there are guidelines that are required for your preparation outline. So these are all of the things that you will be graded on for your preparation outline. I am going to, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to pull up sample outline. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to just dual share these screens. All right, are you seeing, it's so weird. Are you seeing 2 documents or no, just one?
Just one.
I want both these windows to share. Maybe I just put it on the desktop. Okay. I'm going to put them on the desktop so that you can see both. Even though it's not in the best way, we'll just do it like so. All right, I want to go through really quickly here this guidelines required for your preparation outline. And like I said, I will be going over all of this in detail, but I want to give you this side-by-side example. And now you can see both sides, y'all? Anyway, okay, cool. So the first thing that you will be doing is you are going to be, and just keeping in mind, there are 3 sections of your speech: your introduction, your body, and conclusion. So if you see here things that label your introduction, conclusion, body, and transitions. So if you see here, there is a label for the introduction, there is a label for the transition, there's a label for your body. Oh, and then guess what? Down here, you're going to label another transition. You only label the body once, but you label all those transitions. And then you also will label your conclusion. So those are, first of all, what you'll want to do. The introduction and conclusion, as you can see, are written in paragraph form. So you may outline these if you would like to, but typically they are written in outline form. Now the outline, oh, and let me just see, make sure. So Sarah, the example, what do you mean, post which example, huh?
That example?
It's already in your Canvas page.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There's a skeleton example and then an outline example. So this one's there too. And we'll go over
Okay, thank you.
it. Thanks for letting me chew. Sorry, y'all. Okay. So your introduction and conclusion can be written in paragraph form. We'll talk about why that is as we go forward, but you are more than welcome to outline it if it feels more comfortable to you, and I'll show you how to do that. You are going to have your MLA heading with a, so when it says the MLA heading, that's what we're talking about. This heading is going to be like who you are, and then your header with your last name and a page number in the right-hand corner, and that's going to be as a header. Below your MLA header, you will center a title. The title, according to MLA standards, is not capitalized, or sorry, it's not bolded, it's not underlined, it's simply there in the middle. And then below your title, you are going to go ahead and put your topic approval, your general purpose, your specific purpose, and your thesis statement. So you're going to label and write out your transitional statements that you'll also use, but you know that. And then what we'll talk about here that I want to make note of, I'm going to go through how to symbolize everything with you, but the key here is that every symbol must be written in a full sentence. So we don't use bullet points in this class, and we'll talk about why, but note that you are to, every sentence is a new idea. There is only one sentence per symbol. And so if you're seeing over here, the A, that's a symbol, and this is only one sentence because each symbol stands for a new idea. So there's only one sentence per symbol. Your entire document should be single spaced. Do not double space your document. Make sure that it is single spaced, because if you'll notice, we double space in between the symbols, but you single space the sentences and the ideas together. And so if you'll see here, the I sentence is a single spaced, but we double space between the ideas. That helps us to start to establish this differentiation of ideas that our eyes can look at differently. And then we utilize a pattern of indentation. So what does that mean? Well, it means that each idea is going to fall below or underneath the idea that it supports. And so this allows us to see what ideas have expansion upon them and which ones are going to be built out in a bit more detail. And we know that anything that falls underneath that, at least aesthetically, that we can see those ideas falling underneath the ones above it, means that all of those ideas are working to support that one idea there. And so we will go through how to do this, but ultimately you will need a pattern of symbolization and indentation that is there. You will be double spacing between symbols, but single spacing the sentences themselves. Does that make sense to everyone about the single and double space? That you should single space your entire document, because the worst thing is to go back through and have to like do that afterwards, or like space for every single thing.
So you just wanted an MLA format, just not double space.
Right.
Okay.
Good job. Yes. And the last page of your outline is going to be your works cited page. For MLA format, the works cited page is part of the document. I don't know why that 7's over like that, but it is. Is the last page of the document. It does not have, remember, and hopefully you all learned this last week. I started to grade some of those and I will finish those up today for your works cited pages, but knowing that the works cited is not bolded, underlined, or anything. And then your, oops, these ones aren't correct either. Huh. Okay, I'm not going to let this bother me. Allegedly. But these should all be left. Oh, there we go. Left aligned properly. somehow those didn't get there. Anyway, so each of these should be left aligned, but I will let you know how they look in your samples should they not be correct, but otherwise the ones that I saw looked pretty great on your works cited page there. So if you'll note in here, we've started to include our outside sources. And last time you did a little bit with how to write your citations for your works cited page. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to write those citations inside your outline appropriately, and then making sure that you are aware of how to cite those out loud when the time comes. We talked a bit about the preparation outline, having only keywords and phrases on it, that outline that you keep up with you. But the speaker's outline, the one that you have, can also have your outside citations, the ones that you are going to be representing to us. You can have those written down, especially if you are quoting directly, word for word, what somebody was saying, and you want to make sure that you get that right. You're more than welcome to write that out and read that for us, because that is part of the gift of extemporaneous speaking, that it allows us to do those different types of things. To, like, you know, impromptu if we need to, or we can read a bit if we need to, or we can memorize a part that sounds good. But as you'll see here, what we want to do is we want to start incorporating the voices of our other sources within our speech seamlessly. In writing, when we incorporate voices of others, we can assume that the reader will be able to see who we are citing because they have that piece of paper in front of them. So what they will do when you're writing a paper, when individuals are writing papers, they will write the text to be seamless along with their own text, right? Like the man said, you know, the man, quote, expressed his thoughts thoroughly and succinctly, end quote. And then you have the source at the end. We know that that quotation came from somewhere. But out loud in a speech, nobody's looking at anything and nobody has a citation to know where that came from. So your job is to communicate the information in that citation in as much as you need to give the audience knowledge of that credibility of piece and how it plays into your speech. So we'll talk about that as we go forward. But for right now, do any of these guidelines not make sense before I start to put it into terms with each of you that in like real words, hopefully? Okay. I'm going to then stop this share. What I will do is I'm going to put up a new one. Scoop it down here.
Okay, so I do have a question.
Oh, good. Yes, I love it.
The sample skeleton, so you want us to write our introduction and our first body, and then for the second two, you want us just to do the little ABC?
So for this week, you'll have two different assignments. You'll have a rough draft and you'll have a sample skeleton. So let me go through here really quickly. The first step is the skeleton. This is going to give me an understanding that you know exactly where you're going and what you're going to be doing. I want to make sure that you've set up your transitions, your main points, and everything correct. So the sample skeleton, the assignment that you are required, I'm going to put that right here. And here are the descriptions, the rules and guidelines you will be using of how to outline. But the rough skeleton should have the general purpose, specific purpose, thesis statement, should have the title, Label the introduction, transition, body, conclusions as placeholders, and then you're going to write out your one main point. So for example, or like you'll write out your main points. So sorry. So what your skeleton should look like, it's only one page, if you will. It's going to have your name, a title. It'll have your general purpose, specific purpose, thesis statement. You'll see that I've labeled my introduction, body, and transitions. And then I've written out my transitions. I've written out my main point, and I've written out my subpoints that I plan to discuss. Every single one of you, you will have no more than 3 subpoints for each main point. So between 2 and 3 is suffice. And so if you see there, this is all that individual is, turning in here.
It's because I thought since it was empty, that's where we will be writing it.
Oh, like where the introduction, the conclusion are, where they're empty?
Yeah.
You will eventually, but you do not have to submit that for the skeleton part.
Okay, thank you.
We write our introduction, our conclusion last because the introduction tells us what our speech is about. But we don't know what our speech is about until we're done writing it. And so I always encourage that we know our thesis, but once we know that thesis, then we start to work on the body. And over the time, we can start to, while we're gathering materials and looking for different pieces, we can start to think about that introduction and what could come about. But things change all the time. So it's always good to hold off on writing that introduction until you've written the speech, and then go back and do so. Unless you have an introduction that is setting up a historical background, or it's setting up some kind of context that is really important for your audience to understand before they get into the speech, that would be the only reason I would write it sooner, so that you know exactly what has already been contextualized and how that was going to make sense to that first main point. Otherwise, I say hold off, because people will sit there for hours thinking about oh, what's my best attention getter? And, that just may not come to pass. So does it make sense about what y'all are required to turn in? This is all that you have to do for that skeleton?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a quick question. This isn't the assignment that's worth 50 points then, because we don't have the intro and conclusion?
No, this one is worth 10 points. This is, hold on, I'm so sorry I took a bite.
No, it's okay.
So on the date that, oh, is it making sense?
Yeah, I saw the assignment. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that's just the assignment, and then you'll have a main point assignment after.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
So after we do that skeleton assignment and I prove the skeleton, all I'm asking for you to do is go back into that same document and just outline one point.
Okay.
And that one is now done. It's got the A, B, C. And I built it out a little bit more, but that's all you have to do is do one main point. So hopefully that kind of explains. And then on the day that you speak, next Wednesday, that is when the 50-point one is due. And I want to make sure that you get those 50 points and then it's on the right track. So that's why I have you do these assignments. Okay. Let's go into our sample then now. Oh, you know what I wanted to grab down? Where's this one? Put down that one. Close that. I'm going to take this. Okay. All right, everyone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my font. So there's usually 6 fonts that are approved by APA. You know, MLA doesn't have such rigid rules. I think there's like The same 6 apply, but the idea is Times New Roman or Arial would be a 12-point font, and I would encourage you to go with either of those. It makes it much easier. So what I am going to do is I am going to remind you of the MLA formatting. If you want to keep your piece of paper out, and that's why I said keep a Word document on here, and then that will help you, that you can follow along and maybe like write out your things as well. So you're going to put your name at the top, and you can use this exact same piece of paper, and this is the one that you can continue to work in as you go forward. So, and then I'm going to double space, and I'm going to put your professor's name. I guess that would be me as well, but you get it. And then I'll double space, and I'm going to put the full title of the class, Communication Studies 11, and double space. And then I'm going to put the date that this is due. So your speeches are going to be done on the 28th of September, 2022. And so remember that MLA calls for the date, month, and year. I'm going to double space again, and then I'm going to center, and I'm just going to put working title for now, and then I'll double space again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then left align, and here I'm going to put my general purpose, my specific purpose, my thesis statement. Anybody want to tell me what I do to make this thesis statement? Anybody? Oh, go ahead.
To inform my audience about your topic, and then you'll have 3 main points.
Yeah, 2 to 5 main points, right? All I do is copy and paste. I will describe, right? And then we'll talk about the different student services. So we could talk about something like that. Then has everybody written this out, or everybody's able to maybe follow along with this? Even just giving a like a thumbs up would help if that's possible. Okay, great. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to have you now. What we're going to do is I'm going to put in a header. I just double clicked right there. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a header as well. A header, it's going to be also done with a page number. So I like to just insert my page number first. It's going to be the top of the page, the header, and it's going to be the right, yes, and we'll go here. And then the only thing I need to do is in front of that, I need to put my last name. And then what you want to make sure also is that your header is in the same font, there we go, as your other stuff. And then once that's there, it's done, and it will go on each page. Was everybody familiar with how to get there, do that? A header is necessary according to MLA format and standards. Also, it helps that we then, if your papers, like everybody who doesn't have a stapler, you know, if it's printed out, we know what page it goes with and how to keep it attached. And then we know whose that is, which is yours. In MLA, we use Witten, but then in APA, they will use what's called like a running head. And so it'll actually be like the title of the paper and the page number. So just different standards for different types of writing. All right, now I'm going to come in here, and you can all do this in advance. You can put your word introduction, colon, you can put body, transition, colon. I'm going to put my main point 1. I'm gonna also put another transition. I'm gonna put my main point 2 if I have one, put a transition. Then put my main point 3 if I have one. I'm gonna put a transition, and then I'm going to write my conclusion. And I'm going to make this font larger just so that you all can see it, but hopefully you know that and remember that this is only a 12-point font. So does this make sense just even with the labeling, y'all? Just a thumb will do.
Oh, I have a quick question.
I love a quick question.
I think for either one of the examples, the Roman numerals, if you had, say, 2 topics under a single transition, you'd put like 1 and 2 in Roman numerals, I think, for each transition, but is it only limited to 1?
I don't know.
For my first one, I said I'll describe the origins of gender-neutral pronouns, and I have 2 like main topics under that. And
Great.
one of them is like regarding literature and how it originated in that field, and then another is more of like the technical linguistics.
Sarah, I love this, and it helps so much.
Oh, this is Yuma.
No, this is perfect because, this is Yuma. Sorry. Hello, yeah. Yuma. I love this so much because, there you are, Yuma. Because that is exactly what we're going to need to talk about in terms of your transitions and body. So hold on one second and you will be my example. Okay. And yours is you already outlined it perfectly in your own head. You already have that organization down. So it's awesome. So this was the other thing, y'all, is that, oh, wait, I didn't do that. Oh, Amanda, I thought I had copied and pasted that piece that I needed. Hold on. Here, copy. No. Going to tell you a little bit about our formatting here. So public speaking, so every single type of, actually, let me tell it to you this way. A symbol, like a bullet point or a number or a letter, is representative of something else. So that's really what a definition of a sign or a symbol is. It's something that represents something else. So in public speaking and speech writers and communication, everybody uses the same standard of symbolization and indentation because the symbols communicate the same idea. So if you were to put a bullet point, for example, in, let me show you this. So if we were here working on our speech and I was simply to put like, let's say, a bullet point, and I'd be like, you know, Jean is right? We use all these bullet points to like make lists. In public speaking, we aren't listing, and also I don't have any meaning for a bullet point. It doesn't represent anything else. However, our standard of symbolization and indentation, those symbols, let me know what it in fact represents. So, like I said, you want to turn off the formatting to allow for ease of symbolization and indentation and everything, but we follow a letter number format. So your main points are going to be represented by Roman numerals. So that is going to be a number, letter, number, letter. So number, then our letters are subpoints. Those are our ideas that support the main idea. Subpoints, again, going back into numerics rather than Roman, so Arabic numerals, if you are. Now we will represent the 1, 2, 3. So that represents something else, lowercase letters, and then we go back to lowercase Roman numerals. So each level of subordination is different from the one that came before. And we know that because it is not only symbolized different, but it is also indented 0.5 spaces from the one above. And so we start to see how this idea breaks down and which one supports the other. I am going to go ahead and walk us through this again using some kind of hopeful language, but all of your main points are going to be done using Roman numerals. So each of you will have a 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is going to be a sentence that will set up your subpoints. I'm just going to make that clear right now, and we'll go back into how to do that. Every time you have a main point, but everything should always be written, remember, in full sentences. Bullet points also are those things that are like, oh, sub point, right? And I'm supposed to get what that means. No, the reason that we write our speeches in full outline format is because in the event that you were unable to give your speech, you have worked years and hours on it, you're so excited to go in and do this pitch, you have everything that you need, you have a couple note cards, like it is in your body, this is yours, and you get super sick the night before and you can't go and do it. Do you give up the opportunity altogether? No, you send in somebody, maybe a partner or, you know, an assistant to do it for you. But if you don't have anything except for a couple bullet points, you're not going to be able to simply pass off that speech. Ideally, I could take any single one of your outlines that you turn into me and deliver the message and get the content message across as you intended, because it is how you wrote it. But the idea, of course, is that when we get up and deliver it, we deliver it with our own ways and our own personalities. So what I want you to note is that each of you will be outlining, and every single thing that you write should be written in full sentences. So your main points come in and they establish what we are going to be speaking about. But your main points can't stand alone. No, my friends, and they need backup and they need support. So they call in their friends. Now remember, we go number, letter, number, letter. So we start with our main points, and then I'm going to tab in 5, and I'm going to put our first sub point. More than likely, like I said, you will have between 2 to 3 subpoints. Do not have any more than 3. That will be way too long for your speech. If you have more than 3 points, if you have more than 3 main points, I certainly wouldn't have 3 subpoints for each of your main points, because that will be rather long in time. So what does the main point call in? It calls in its subpoints. And these subpoints are sub, meaning below the main point. The only job of this subpoint is to explain this main point, which is all working to support the specific purpose, which is all going to tell us exactly what this speech is about. So again, like I said, you will more than likely have between 2 to 3 subpoints, but those subpoints can't stand on their own. No, they need to maybe explanation. Maybe they need a definition. Maybe they need a testimony or a quotation that we can talk about, right? So what we do is we bring in backup for that subpoint. And now I would make this, if I need to support the subpoint, then it needs a new symbol, because that's a new idea altogether. So if I am describing this subpoint, I am going to utilize another symbol, R1, because that's our next place. And I'm going to put this as a subpoint. That's what comes next, the subpoints. So when the subpoint's job is only to explain the subpoint, and the subpoint is explaining the main point, which is all working to support the specific purpose and that whole purpose of your speech altogether. Now, if the subpoint needs help and it needs describing and it needs description, then it needs a new idea under it. And it can't be a number because the number represents the subpoint. So now we start to build down again and we go back to letters. Well, we've already used our capitals. So knowing now that we will use our lowercase. And here we have our subpoint, meaning it falls 3 below the main point. The subpoint is supporting the subpoint, which is supporting the subpoint, blah, 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 which is supporting the main point, which is also supporting the specific purpose. And so each thing is unique to itself. Now, let's say that that subpoint also needs description. Holy moly. Well, that's where we go back to lower Roman numerals. So if your Roman numerals are indicated by an I and an II and an I and B and all of that, the same thing will happen, but you will use lowercase. So it'll be like a little I. And that'll be just sub to the 4th point, if you will. Now, let's say this sub to the 4th point, or this subpoint, or this subpoint needs not expansion, but it needs to be described a little bit further. But we can only do it in one sentence. You continue to build out that idea until it is done. On its own line. So does this structure start to make sense to each of you? Knowing that you will be using Roman numeral, letter, number, letter, Roman numerals. And that will be your breakdown. If you have to go past this point, okay, and you absolutely can, just note that it becomes, you go back to letters and it's going to be double letters. But again, it's a 5-minute speech and I don't know how far we're going to get into that. Any thoughts about this? I'm going to just call you out if you don't mind going through what, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how this can in fact look in, if we wanted to, real life. So if I was writing to inform my audience about how to make chocolate chip cookies, I will describe the ingredients needed, how to put the dough all right. If we have this as our thesis statement. So Sarah, will you start us off? What is our first main point about?
The ingredients you need.
Oh, absolutely. So what we can't, oh, and you know what? Let's talk about that. So actually, Yuma, let me have you come back here. The ingredients we need. So here we go. And I'm going to have us each do this, but I want to point out a really important fact of your transitions and your main points. if you learn anything today, hopefully this is the key thing that you take home. Before we go into our main point, we know we have to have a transition. So you have a transition before every single main point, even after your thesis statement. So remember, your transition is a combination of a signpost, your main point, and in some way, shape, or form, that specific purpose. What is the purpose again? Oh, to make the chocolate chip cookies. So what I've done is I said, first, let's gather the ingredients you will need to make chocolate chip cookies. That's our purpose, and we know. So Yuma, now what do I put here for my main point? Because many of you may be saying, well, that's my main point. Let's look at the ingredients, right? So for each of you, what I want you to start doing is thinking about a pattern of organization for your main points. If you recall, in our last lesson, we learned about different patterns of organization. We had topical, chronological, spatial, and cause effect, right? And so with these different patterns, we talked about organizing our main points like that. But now I want you to remember that even though our main points are like that, we can also start to organize our subpoints with this same idea in mind. And so if we were talking about, and somebody I think has done this. Oh, Diego. Diego, are you still, did you see my, let's see, you're doing Olympics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, and you said you wanted to stick to the summer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then one of the first main points was about like the, where it's.
No. My first main point is the origins of the Olympics in general.
Right. Okay. So yeah, and I made some changes to your thesis today. You can always go back in and look at that one. But the origins of the Olympics is your first main point, right? And so in this case, if you're looking to us in terms of this history and where it started, if you know that you can only or should only have between 2 to 3 subpoints to describe that, this is where your organizational pattern comes in, and you start to think, okay, well, what in those origins are the key parts that I want to remember or that I want to highlight? And so we could say something like, the Olympics can be understood, the origins of the Olympics can be understood through the, and I'm not even sure what this is, the history of Hellenism in Greece, right? I don't even know if this is true. And so it's like, so what you would do is consider like a chronological order for this first one, right? Like the first hearings of a Olympic game, right, came from, or something to that extent. When I was talking to you when I wrote up earlier about like even if you talked about like the history of Santa Monica College, right? And it's like, one, there have been 3 shifts there have been 3 shifts in SMC's history over the past, 100 years. Okay. SMC originated, and then it's like the first shift, second shift, or this would be like the 3rd shift, if that makes sense. Oh, I'm so sorry. Just 1 second. This is daycare. Hello? This is she. Hi. So what you want to do as an individual is simply start to think about what types of patterns or different subcategories start to emerge here. And when you were going through and maybe doing your graphic organizer, you started to see those different categories underneath. But you can typically do this through like enumeration, whether we're listing, whether it's by maybe time period, whether it's by specific topic. So for example, if I was writing for you, Yuma, and we were going into the, sorry, this is down here. Let me go up here. And Yuma, can you give me the specific purpose one more time?
My specific purpose is to inform my audience about the historical use of gender-neutral pronouns.
Gender-neutral programs?
Pronouns, gender-neutral pronouns.
So that's our specific purpose. So, and then your first main point was which one?
My first main point was I'll describe the origins of the pronouns for you to learn about their roots.
All right, great. So we are going to go into our first main point. No, we have to give our transition, right? So we're going to write a transition first. And we're going to say first, let me describe what you just said, the origins of gender pronouns, period, okay? Where they come from. Okay, now we have that first main point, and you're like, oh, I already wrote about that. But like you said, you already know that you have 2 parts of the origins that you want to talk about, and you're not talking about it chronologically. Instead, you're talking about it according to what?
I think it is chronological, like the style of my speech.
Well, you told me those 2. You said what's going to go underneath the origins?
Oh, the origins, I have sort of the literary history aspect, and then the second point will be more of like the linguistics. So I described like what the original quote unquote they was.
Okay. Let us go ahead then, and since you have broken that down into 2 parts, which makes sense, and they are 2 pieces of history, you can say that, and it's like the topically, like chronological, if that makes sense. There are 2 pronouns that give that can provide us with insight, insight to how something like that, right? Then I have my tab. And so now I know that there are two origins of pronouns that can provide us with insight as to how they've been used over time. The first literary origins of pronouns. You know, like 40 BC. I don't know when this happens, but does this make sense? Liter.
Oh, yes. I said.
I mean, like that.
Yeah, that should be.
Right. I don't even know, but Victorianism, who even knows? But in that case, does this make sense to you?
Yes.
How those two would be broken down. So in this way, you have a transition. So everybody, if we're seeing this, your transition lets you know what the main point is about. Your main point covers what the subpoints are about. And that will help you to make those distinct differences. Is that clear there? So for example, if we were talking about going back to this and we were talking about the Olympics, right? The transition would be something like, you know, let's start by looking at the origins of the Olympic Games. Then the origin of the Olympic Games can be understood to the history of Hellenism and Greece. And so, you know, then what you would do is go through like these ideas of like how Greece thought they were the best and wanted to show off their stuff. I don't know if that's true. But in this case, your main point and your transitions are different. So remember, the transition tells us what the whole concept is going to be about, the main point, and the main point itself is going to indicate what those subpoints or what you're going to be covering. Does anybody have any questions about that? Does it make a little bit more sense? And I thank you so much, Yuma, for reminding me that we needed to talk about the difference between those transitions and those main and subpoints. So the same thing is going to happen here. If we have a thesis statement, and then we have our gathering of ingredients. So our first main point then can start here. So Sarah, like I said before, could you give me maybe a sample of your first main point?
I actually have my transition to like the letter C, if I can read it to you. Oh, but I think this is Yuma's, not mine.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna go back to the chocolate chip cookie for the class.
Oh.
On the screen. Is that one on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So so you said it before, the first main point would be right?
Yes.
Okay, so is that enough? Can I just go on?
No, you want full sentences.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So will you put that in the full sentence for me? Let's think about this. So if we have ingredients, how could we think about breaking that down? Has anybody ever made a chocolate chip cookie before?
I just get the box ones.
Okay, good for you. Way to go there as well. Hold on, I'm going to pull up, like, for example, let's go. If I went here. All right. Here it is. The back of the cookie recipe. Cooking for engineers. That's really funny. Does it have it here? Let me see where I can just find that better. Here. No, I don't. Can't somebody just give me a picture? Come on. All right, everyone. If we're looking at the chocolate chip cookies, we see that there are two things happening here. So here's all of our ingredients. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you can say there are 10 ingredients that you will need, and we could do it by number. But that's an interesting way to break it down. And remember, you don't want like 10 subpoints. So you can list if you want, but another idea may be to look to how they organize it. So combine flour, baking soda, and salt in a small bowl. Beat butter, granulated sugar, brown sugar, and vanilla extract in larger mixing bowl until creamy, and add 1 egg at a time. So now we know we have 2 different mixtures here. There's 2 types of ingredients. So Sarah, what are these 2 types of ingredients? They call
powder, liquids.
Yeah, absolutely. So solids and liquids, absolutely. So they're dry ingredients and wet ingredients, right? Great job. Absolutely. So I'm going to stop the share there, and then I'm going to go back to our share. And so now that we know what we have, I think it's this one, we can go in there and we can say something like, do you want to try writing that in a sentence, that they're dry ingredients and wet ingredients? So we can say something like, you will need to gather both dry and wet recipe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I can do it like this. So then Diego, will you let me know? I'm going to go through and I'm going to describe these dry ingredients. So Diego, what is the symbol I'm going to use to explain the ingredients? Is this, is the outline loading for you all? Is it on there?
Yeah, you would use.
And it's okay if you don't
use.
Yeah, remember those double ingredients, but what symbol will we utilize to explain the ingredients?
You would use a number, right? Because the first one being Roman numeral, then a letter and a number.
Yeah, absolutely. So what number do you think we should put? Like a 3?
I say a 1.
I'd say a 1 too. Absolutely. And should I put it here underneath the A?
No, under.
Okay, good, because it's supporting that idea, right?
Yeah.
Good job. Thank you so much. What is an ingredient, Diego, we could do? Did you remember reading one of those?
No, I didn't read it, but I think one of the ingredients is flour, right?
That's right, and it is. So what so here, do I just write flour?
No, you will go like into like what kind of flour and like specifics into it.
In one sentence, sure, I would say you will need 2.5 cups of flour. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. Great job. Okay. Derek, are you there?
Yeah.
Hey, so Derek, if you're following along, what's another dry ingredient that we may need?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
It's okay. I will say it's
baking powder.
Oh, great. Okay, Derek, it's baking powder.
All right.
Okay, so Derek, if I need baking powder, I'm going to put a B. Why would I not put a B?
Because you want to, that's included in the subpoints. So it's gonna be like the second subpoint under one.
This would be more the wet ingredients, right? Good.
Yeah.
So instead, if I'm doing another ingredient, I'm going to put an A here and then go into my next ingredient.
I feel if it's part of the dry ingredients, I wouldn't it not be like the subpoint?
Good. So it would in fact be a 2 because it's another type of ingredient. The only reason this would be an A is if I was describing the flour.
Oh, okay.
So awesome job. Yeah, no, you were right. So I'm going to put this here and I'm going to go 2, and in a full sentence, you will also need, 1 TBS tablespoon.
And that one's going to be double spaced as well.
Absolutely. Every time you put a period, hit return. So just think every time I end a sentence, new symbol. What is our last ingredient? Let's go ahead. Diego, are you there? Oh, wait, Diego, did you already do yours?
Yeah.
You already did. Thank you. Izelia, are you there? Or Yuma, are you there? Can you help us out?
Yes.
Okay, Yuma. So our last type of ingredient is we're going to talk about sugar. So I'm going to put an A here and describe sugar.
Wouldn't it be a number because it's also a form of dry ingredient?
There you go. Absolutely. So we will need 2 types of sugar, Yuma. So now what do I know I need to do? If I'm saying, hey, I'll need 2 types of sugar, I better go on and describe what?
The 2 types of sugar.
Absolutely, because anytime my audience says like what, how, why, in what way, take another step and describe, right? I'm going to describe the sugar. So I'm going to put a 4 here.
You'll put a lowercase a.
Yes, because it's supporting the sugar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good job. So you will need a, I don't know, cup of white granulated sugar. You will also need brown sugar. That makes sense to y'all there?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if those are my like 3 dry ingredients, fantastic. I think I should put 4 here because there's a real good one. So let's do this last one. Eric, are you there?
Yeah.
What's the essence of the cookie? What's the good stuff?
I think salt.
Oh, I love salt, and that is, I guess, maybe a dry ingredient as well, which is so funny. But I was thinking, like, what's the essence, like the of the chocolate chip cookie?
With chocolate chips.
Yeah, the chocolate chips, absolutely, fantastic. So we're going to want to do the chocolate chips, so that's another ingredient. So would I put a C here?
No.
Would I put in
A number?
A Roman numeral?
No.
Why would I put a Roman numeral here? When would I do this? If I was describing the what?
Because the chocolate chip is kind of like different from the sugar, so.
Absolutely.
And since it's like a dry ingredient, you need to like put a number.
Good. I'm very proud of you. Also, yeah, if I was going to describe the brown sugar, that would be the only reason for me to, to put that one there. So good on that. So we will do the 4 and we will say, don't forget the chocolate. Something like so. So
Yes.
let's talk. Good job. Thank you so much. Who else is here? Oh. Who else is here? Let's see. Oh, we don't have very many people. Okay. So then, Sarah, we're back to you in terms of this chocolate chip cookie. So now let's say I want to talk to you about different types of chocolate chips. Could you tell me what symbol we'll use?
You'll use the lowercase a, b.
Good. Okay, good. So what's one type of chocolate chip?
Milk chocolate.
Great.
Dark chocolate.
Oh, fun.
That's all I got right now.
I'm going to show you a little something here, y'all, so that we can get an understanding of some of our citations. I'm going to put a C here, and I'm going to say, my personal favorite are here, oh, actually, it will be our semi-sweet. Now, some people will say, hey, isn't that an opinion? Isn't that persuasive? No, you're just saying what your personal opinion is, and it's not in the specific purpose, which is to persuade you to eat Nestle Toll House. I'm just simply letting you know that this is the one that I like the best. Now, I am going to go on and explain this a bit more, because if I'm giving you options and I'm telling you that one is my favorite, maybe I'll expand upon that and let you know a little bit why those are. And so I can always utilize an outside voice. And so I'm going to show you a little something. When you did your library assignment, if you recall, you had to find a good amount of information from your sources that are the attributions, like what are the attributes of the person who wrote it or the publication itself. So it's like just getting all the information to make the citation so that we can give credit and honor to the individual of whom originally said or spoke those words. Now, whoever spoke those words, you are utilizing their words because you deem them to have some sense of credibility. Something about them says that they can, that they have some kind of expertise or knowledge or know-how. And now in the case of our speeches, however, we also may not need that know-how. And so maybe in turn, like the publication is what becomes the popular thing. So the 5 pieces of information that you're going to want to keep in your pocket from those attributes or from your sources are the author, the author's title, publication, article title, and the year. Do all of these things need to be stated out loud? No. Could they? Yes. Let me show you an example. So I'm saying, don't take my word on these semi-sweet morsels. And then instead, I'm going to give somebody else's word. And I'm going to say something like, Now, what have we done here? So I have taken the particular attributes that we were talking about, and I have put them into my outline. According to MLA standards, when we are writing, if we have this information, the author, style, publication, all that information up front, then when we're writing, there's no need to put all those attributions in the back, like the name and the page number, because you've already set it up front. Otherwise, there is something called in-text citations. And you will learn a little bit about that more today with your in-text citations. But the only thing that MLA calls for, if you have this information up front, if you at least have the author, the only thing you need to put in is the page number. And we would end it like so. Now, many of you may not have a source that in fact has a page number, or perhaps it comes from a website or something. In this event, we also have to simply start thinking about what our audience needs to know. And so hopefully you've started to read a little bit about that this week. But in terms of your audience, what is going to build more credibility in the mind of them in terms of this citation? Is it that Rachel Ray said it because is she better known to your audience by putting her title in there? Or does the magazine itself hold the weight of the authority? So like I was saying before, there's oftentimes authors who write for newspapers or magazines, and they're just staff writers. In this case, a writer for the LA Times, I wouldn't even mention that. I'd simply say an article in the LA Times recently stated that, if that makes sense. Or according to the website, I would never say like, you know, smg.com. It states that. In my head, I sit there as an audience member and think, what's smg.com? Where did they get that? Where's the authority? Where did it come from? In a website, obviously, you may not have an author or a title or a publication or all that. So all the weight comes from the source itself. If I'm speaking about, let's say, a Nike shoe and I'm using Nike.com, then like that makes sense. But if I don't know, if I'm saying like, you know, shoegenius.org, which is like the ultimate go-to for all shoe knowledge with 580 followers, I give it some credibility on the back end so that that piece of information becomes validated and it becomes understood in the context of your speech. So in terms of saying something out loud, how it would sound is more fluid. We need to, though, remember to always include our quote, end quote. So you are going to have the option of whether to quote or whether to paraphrase a topic, or sorry, a outside citation. If it is longer than 3 sentences, do not quote it. Instead, put it in your own words. You are still going to cite that individual. It would simply be something like in an article written by Rachel Ray titled "Which Chip?" She asserts that Nestle is still the best because of how it cooks and makes your flavors come to life, something like that. So now I have said what she said in my own words. I've contextualized it and I've restated it. And it said like she asserts or she summarized or she said, rather than using the direct quotes. If I am going to directly quote my words, then Rachel Ray, acclaimed chef, wrote an article in this month's Better Homes magazines titled "Which Chip?" that stated, quote, Nestle told how semi-sweet chips hold the test of time for smoothness of texture, ease of baking, and provide the sweet, salty flavors one needs in a cookie, end quote. I want to know when it starts and when it stops out loud. So make sure you say those quote, end quotes so that we know when your voice starts and when it stops. So for each of you, does this make a bit more sense in terms of how this organizational pattern works, how it should be written in full sentences, how you have double spaces in between? There's a specific pattern of symbolization and indentation. And then you are going to make sure that I have seen 3 different sources used either by paraphrase, direct quote, summary, in some capacity within that outline. And Sarah, thanks for putting the thumbs up. Anybody else have a thumbs up? Y'all feel like that makes sense?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have to add our sort of sources, 3 of them, into the outline, like as we speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so either an example, like I said, testimony, a statistic, anything that you can do to expand upon. So when you are trying to describe something in your own words, see if you can find an expert or somebody who says it more magically and beautifully and put just their words in instead. When I'm trying to illustrate what I'm talking about, maybe somebody else had a great example, cut and paste their example and say, an example came from, and give that source. Because it gives and builds your credibility that you've actually done like the work, that you know something outside of yourself, that you're utilizing a collective knowledge. And then additionally, it gives that knowledge to the audience as to where it came from, and it builds that credibility.
Okay. And also regarding the sources, can they come from like, say, an online transcript or like an article instead of just books and journals?
Yeah, so articles, are magazines, newspapers, and journals. So you can always use those. You can also use a book. You can use a movie. You can use a piece of paper. You can use anything in the whole entire world as evidence.
Okay, thank you.
As long as it meets the idea of like that it's credible and it's reliable.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else have a question about what we've done so far here? Okay, I'm going to, yeah.
Is there a way I can read you like my transitions and like my subtopics for like just one? All right, but can we do it after class?
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. I think that we could, do you have it with you on a piece of paper? Can you share it?
Yeah, I have it on Google Docs. Hold on, let me join the Zoom on my computer real quick.
Okay, do that. And then as you do so, I'm going to go back in. I don't even know where'd that document go that I like set up. Then I got rid of that one. Where'd it go? I don't know where it was, but again, don't forget your heading.
So just to be clear, for the assignment that's due tomorrow, we only do like the sub points and everything only for one of our main points, right? Or do we do it for the whole thing?
Do the whole thing, main points and sub points, transitions. The sampler is the sample. Sorry, it will look like this. You are only required to do the, what this document is. Wait, is that right? Where is it? Oh, here. so if you'll see here, that's all you have to do for this skeleton. This main point has only, or this speech has 2 main points. Oh, sorry, I just didn't do the third one. Okay. Why don't we do this? There we go. So in this case, we have our MLA. We have a title, general purpose, specific purpose, thesis statement, check. You have a labeled introduction, body, and transition. Right now, these are just space savers. You don't have to write anything there for your introduction and conclusion, but you've written out your transition, main point, and then the subpoints that you have in full sentences. And that's all you have to do. And then a conclusion, just use a space saver.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, does that make sense to everybody else as well? That is all you have to do for tomorrow's assignment? Awesome. All right, Sarah, you let us know when you're back. And
Okay, give me 1 second.
sure. And while she's doing that, did anybody else want me to like do yours with you right now? More than happy.
For some reason, it's not letting me screen share. Oh, wait, there we go.
And that's a good thing to try beforehand, because sometimes that comes about as well if you haven't done it yet and you have to give your computer permission. So really make sure that you're trying that beforehand. All right, this looks great so far. Okay, first I was
sorry.
Oh no, you're doing right. Yeah, so let's go down. Let's look at that first main point. Food deserts are areas where there is little access to food. Okay, so what I would do is, I don't know if you want to start talking about specific places. And that's what I would only say. Because if we're talking about what food deserts are, you then go into telling me that New York has the highest population. That's not telling me about what a food desert is.
Well, I thought that because I described it in the first topic, that kind of answered it. And then I went on to what place has like the highest food desert.
So I would really, so like when we talk about it, for sure, like that it does have the highest population, but that's not going to explain to us what a food desert looks like. So I understand that it's like little access to healthy, affordable food. So, and so, you know, food deserts are typically in areas with extreme poverty. And then what I would do is I'd maybe even go into like the first thing is that access. You could talk about the access to food if you wanted to, in terms of that in food deserts. This means that there is not a grocery store within like a specific radius. Okay. If that makes sense. And then you could, for like the second one, if you wanted to do that, then you could talk about, so it's like, this is what, so this is where it occurs, if you will, in areas of extreme poverty. So you could do that and then give us like that demographic that like, this is what's lacking. And then what you want to talk about is then what foods are instead there. And so what instead is provided and why. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like food deserts it doesn't mean that they don't have food. They have a ton of food. It's just crappy food, right? And so that's the first part, is that there's a lack of access. And so you can talk about how they're not built, and then talk about like how individuals have to drive far. And if it's in an impoverished area, not everybody has access to vehicle or transportation, right? So it's like all those things go along with it. So that's how I would do it. And then the B, like you have, talk about what the actual spaces that you do have to engage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. And then the C, you would take that out, because you would only have A and B in the one, and you would go into 2 and make that children being limited to nutritious food can cause children's limitation of nutritious food impacts them both mentally and physically. And then your A could be mental and your B could be physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you are so very welcome. Good job. Does that make sense to everyone else as well? Anybody else want me to go through that with them? Okay. Let me show you really quickly what the so if I'm here with my catchy title, I put my general purpose, my specific purpose, my thesis statement. Again, my transition, I need to label my introduction. I need to label the body, and then the transitions here. So then my main point comes in. Now, what does a speaker's outline look like? Well, we've all written this together, and ideally you want to keep the same form for your speaker's outline. But instead, what you want to do is you want to do something like so. And so I would write something like so. Now, why would I be so brave to write something like so? Well, we all just wrote this together, right? And so if I was to gauge and look at this and start to practice with it, I could start to practice and put my own voice into it. And I would not start to memorize it. So I'd say something like, we need to gather both wet and dry ingredients to make our chocolate chip cookies. Let's first start gathering our 4 dry ingredients. The first thing that you will need is a cup of flour. You will also need 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then you are going to need 2 different types of sugar. First, you will need a cup of white granulated sugar, and then you are going to need some brown sugar. Don't forget the next ingredient, my favorite one, those chocolate chips. You are more than welcome to use milk chocolate chips if you like. Perchance dark chocolate chips are your favorite, but my personal favorite are Nestle Toll House semi-sweet chips. I am not the only one who has this chip as a favorite, so don't take just my word for it. Let me read you something here. Rachel Ray, acclaimed chef, wrote an article in this month's Better Homes and Gardens magazine titled Which Chip? That stated, quote, Nestle Toll House semi-sweet chips hold the test of time for smoothness of texture, ease of baking, and provide the sweet, salty flavors one needs in a cookie, end quote. So with that, I did not have to sit there and stare at it and read it. I knew what it was. I could glance at the paper and I could talk about it. And that's the important thing about writing your outline in your own voice. How do you speak and what language do you use? write that out or make the speaker's outline and only practice with this in your own voice. Does that make sense to everyone? Hopefully. Okay. Oh, that's good. Let's go ahead and take this one down. I'll leave that one down. All right, one last time. Let's make sure each of you understand the criteria that's necessary for your speech. So we all got that we are to label our introduction, our conclusion, our body, and our transitions. Eventually you will write those out as well, but they must have labels on them. The introduction and conclusion are written in paragraph format. And for this assignment coming up, you can simply label them and go into it in that way. You must have an MLA heading, which is like your name and all, and a header with a page number on each page of the outline. So remember that. Below your MLA heading, center your title and left align the topic, general purpose, specific purpose, and thesis statement. Label and write out your transitions that you will use to alert the audience that you're moving from one point to another. Remember, these are included before each main point. Every symbol represents a new idea and therefore should only be one sentence. So remember, single space your document. Every time you put a period, hit return and you should be good to go. The last page of your outline is the We're Excited page of information for anything that you're using outside. And remember that when you're citing your sources inside, to use as many attributions as possible. And the only piece of information that you need to put in parenthetical representation would then be the page number of the document. So any questions on your outline, the formatting, the structure, citing your sources, writing that works cited page? No, okay, good. Does anybody then have an idea as to, because we are here, I see that we only have like, we have like 40 minutes, but I'm not quite sure what else. If you all wanted, does anybody want to go over their skeleton together right now? And I can write those up and that can be an example. Or would you all like me to discuss anything else that you have outstanding in week? Actually, you know what? I think the thing that I would like to do is maybe tell you a little bit about the introduction. So when you're writing your introduction, and like I said before, y'all, and I'm going to put this introduction here, your introduction should be written last. Obviously, you have your thesis statement, and that's what's going to guide the entire content of your speech. But your introduction can be written last because it's going to contextualize and introduce what the speech is about. And if you don't know what your speech is about and you haven't written it yet, then we can't necessarily introduce it. So take a little bite. The day I decide to not have a smoothie, I tell you. All right. Your introduction is going to have 4 parts to it. On your last speech, you had 3 pieces to your introduction. It was the attention getter. So always start with an attention getter. Do not start with your name. Start with the attention getter. You had the reveal topic portion, and then you had your thesis statement. You are going to have those same pieces in your introduction this time. But what we are also going to have is we are going to add in a credibility statement. So what do we mean by a credibility statement? A credibility statement is something that is sound for the topic and for the audience, but credibility is the audience's impression of whether or not a speaker is qualified to speak on a given topic. in the real world, when you are asked to give a speech, you will be typically introduced by another individual. They'll come out, they'll give your accolades, they'll tell all the things that you do, so that by the time you get around to speaking about your topic, people aren't questioning like, well, what does this person know? And why are they, or when are they the expert in? In this case, you don't have anybody giving you an introduction. And so it's always a good idea to contextualize your connection to your speech. And it's an easy way to build in credibility as well when you give that own personal connection and personal story. So there are two parts to any type of credibility that an individual can derive. And so that expertise comes in two forms. The first is one's competence, and the other is one's character. And even though your speech is not a persuasive speech, it is still important that your audience has a good impression of you as a speaker, and knowing that your intentions are for telling this information good and for the purpose of informing. But also, like, then what's your expertise? Why do you know about this? How do you know about it the most? So how do you know what you know? So for each of you, I want you to think about, how do you know what you know? In terms of credibility and competence, we often will hear expertise coming from specific things like having work experience, or perchance you've worked in a job that long, or you have an education, a certification, a degree in something. Maybe you've been researching about it for quite some time, which is also an effective way to say something. Maybe you have personal experience because a member of your family or a best friend has something that you are speaking about. So I say that, for example, if I am a student doing a speech on diabetes, right? I can talk about like that I've done extensive research on the topic, sure. And that will suffice and give us some type of like competence that you've done. But not only have I done extensive research on the topic, but my father is diabetic, and growing up with somebody with diabetes in the house, I was able to come to know just as much as that individual how to take care and help out. So you can kind of contextualize it and add some more ways. One way that I really think is an exciting thing, and you can even think about using it for your attention getter, is talking about like your interest and how you got excited into the topic. So for example, I had a student one semester who was doing a speech about, oh gosh, something in child development. I don't even remember now, but the introduction of her speech, she utilized her credibility by saying, last semester, I took a child development class here at Santa Monica College. And ever since learning in that class, I've had this passion to grow and know more. And so I've started to do more research on the topic of blank. And that's what I'm here to present with you today. So some type of sentence that establishes how you know what you know and why you want us to know it. What is the goodwill or the character or the purpose for us to know this? Now, in persuasion, that goodwill or why you want us to know it may come about much more easily, right? Like, oh, I want you to know this because there's a problem going on and we need to figure it out and we need to help people, or, you know, there's oppressive issues, etc. Or you're going to get sick if you don't do it. But in this case, what is the need or what is the necessity to understand this information? Well, making our audience aware of the relevance or the importance of a topic is always an effective way as well. Like, why is it necessary for your audience to hear about this? And even if it's something like, I know you may be thinking like, okay, well, the Olympics, why does my audience need to know about it? It's something that comes every 4 years. It happens internationally. It has been around for this long. It's like, it's one of those things that's within our everyday life, right? So even simply talking about, like, as it comes up in the next 4 years, you will always be experiencing this. It's interesting to know what the origins are and where it came from. And so now you have a better understanding, right? That would be a simple way. What got you into the Olympics? And then hopefully you can even say something like, and I want to share that same passion and excitement that I got when I started researching and understanding for you all today. And so simply communicating how you know what you know and why you want them to know that is your type of credibility statement. It can be done in 1 to 2 sentences in your introduction. Doesn't matter where it falls, and it doesn't matter how it's incorporated. If it comes implicitly through your attention getter, that may be a story about how you came to understand the topic, great. But if you need to explicitly also just say it aloud, you absolutely can. I am credible to speak to you today because, and you put that in. Or after dog training my own pet for the past year, I have come to know a lot about the topic. Does this make sense to y'all about this part that needs to be included in your introduction? Okay. Hoping so. So in your introduction, remember that you want to start by strategically gaining the interest of your audience. So always starting with an attention getter. Every speech, you know, you give, have some kind of jumping off point for your topic that's going to get us interested, excited, and engaged with what you're speaking about. If you are going to use a general statement, make sure that it's broad enough, but it is also isn't persuasive. So for example, when we're talking about like food deserts, that's a good one that could potentially have, you know, the possibility, if you will, of, what do I want to say? I got distracted because I looked in the chat. So hold on 1 second. So the chat question was, give the credibility statement before the thesis. Yes, you have to start with the attention getter and you have to end with the thesis statement. Otherwise, how it all gets meshed together, also it's up to you, these other parts. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So when we were talking about food deserts, if we're going to be then providing you with like background information and like contextualizing what this issue is, we wouldn't want to go into starting to lay out heavy issues of like something needs to change, something needs to happen, and that's why you need to be informed about it. No, something is happening. It is going on. This is how many people are in food deserts. Let me tell you about it. And although those two things are very fine line, one says you should do something and one simply says this is what it is. And making sure in your introduction, when you are establishing that topic in those general ways, that you are in fact staying informative. So you'll have your attention getter. Once you give your attention getter and then you come and you reveal, oh, that's what this speech is about, right? Like, oh, that's what this story related to. Oh, that quote, that's what this means now. Oh, interesting. So whatever it is that you use to start your speech, remember to tie that into the specific purpose. Your specific purpose is the topic. And this is where you can start to explain to us what that topic is. So one place is to put it in context, like what the perspective is, what's going on with it now. You know, how does it fit in the field of today? You can also talk about why it's relevant and important. But remember, this is a great place to put any background information that we may need to know. So what do we need to know about this topic, the state of where it's at before we get into the actual speech itself? And like I said, you're going to want to explain the relevance to the audience. You can do that in the specific provide background information, and you can speak to them directly. And you can even ask a rhetorical question if you want, or like you may be wondering what in the world, you know, the history of basketball has to do with me. Or you don't have to ask it in that way, but you can also say, you know, because basketball is the blank sport with over blank people watching in the world, it's not going away, and it's a specific part of our popular culture society. And therefore, it's important for us to have a good understanding about what it is, because it really does, you know, it is a part of what we are. So does the background and the attention getter, hopefully that makes sense. Then I talked to you about the credibility. Remember, establishing your intentions or your character, as well as your competence and your ability to give in the speech. And then the last thing that you are going to do is assert your thesis statement. Now, an important thing to remember is that you're writing and practicing how you would say your thesis in front of the audience, because you would not say, to inform my audience about introductions. No, because your audience is right there. It'd be weird. You're like, who's your audience? Me. So, right. So to inform each of you today a bit more about introductions to speeches, right? So we can connect with our audience. And a surefire way to build the credibility at the top of your speech, and this is whether you're in person or whether you're online, is to make strong eye contact and project that type of confidence in your body as you state that thesis statement. It is the thing that you know because you wrote it first. You know exactly what your 3 main points are, and being able to articulate that directly into us is going to set you on a smooth trail right into that first transition and main point. So I encourage you to remember that rhetorical strategy as you go forward. So your introduction is still only about like 15 to 20% of the speech, keeping in mind that that's more going to be about 1 minute in length, and keeping your time for that purpose. Do not go on and on in your attention getter. You can make your attention getter succinct and that explanation succinct as well, and get right into the body and the depth and the breadth of your speech. We don't want to provide so much information in the introduction that it's like, well, what was the purpose of the entire speech already if I've just pretty much given you everything there? So for each of you there, any other thoughts in terms of the introduction? Okay. There is one thing that is different in terms of your conclusion, and I will go in to discuss that really quick as well. So if you remember, your conclusion has 3 different parts, and that is going to be the same for this speech. So there are a couple ways that we can do that. One, we want to use a transitional phrase. So that's our first thing, such as to close today, to wrap things up, to conclude. You can say any of those words that let us know. It's a signpost, right? Then we want to summarize our thesis. Now, in contrast to the first speech where we simply did the, I told you about my job, my family, and what I like to do on weekends so you can get to know me better. Because we built out this speech a bit more, you are going to give us a friendly reminder about a highlighted piece of a main point. So what do you want us to focus on, or what do you want to highlight from that main point that may reinforce or really drive home the point of your speech? So for example, let's say anything. Oh, paraphrasing versus repeating. Watch repeating them just simply word for word. Paraphrasing allows you to capture the essence of your speech, unlike the repetition. So if I was saying something like, so today you got to know me a little bit better by telling you about my parents and what they did for a living and how they've always worked in public service. I also told you a little bit about my job. I've been teaching for 21 years and I plan to do it until I can't anymore. And finally, I told you about my hobbies. Spending time with my family on the water over any period of time is always it. Hopefully each of these things helped us get to know you, right? So whatever those highlights are that you want us to know, it's a good idea to remind us at the end. And then how you draw to your close, remember, we want to draw to a close and connect, making sure that we drive back to either the attention getter that we started with, or in essence, what was the context or the importance of us knowing that, and how at the end has that come to make sense? The important thing that you remember is your purpose in the conclusion. Your purpose is not to call anybody into action or encourage them to go try or do or look up something. It's simply for them to have been informed. And so making sure that we're not taking that next step on to urge them for action is really important. So that is something that you can look through as well. So for all of y'all, any questions in terms of those introductions and conclusions? Anybody have any ideas of what they wanted to talk about last minute? You want me to go through and write something up with you? Okay. I am then going to let you go a bit earlier today, and you can go in and you can, continue to work on your own things as they come up. Make sure that you have signed up for a speaking date. Make sure that if you wanted to come to office hours today and work on your outline or your sample, that you could do so with me and that we can work on it. And otherwise, I will, of course, get each of you some information as the rest of the week goes before we go into the weekend. And then, of course, like on Monday again, just to get you acclimated and accustomed to what you need to do and some last minute checklists for our informative speech. Other than that, I'm going to assume there's no more questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording.